Amanda Bynes, no, God love her. Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name's Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Hello. And this week on the podcast, this week saw the release of The Golden Spurtle, a fly-on-the-wall documentary examining the world of competitive porridge making.
Which, when I heard that title, I thought, is this a J.K. Rowling thing? It like with a golden snitch? Is that what it is?
No,
Maybe
luckily
that's where she
not.
got it.
Do you think she got it from that?
Yeah.
Well, my main question was, what is a spurtle? Which I will tell you about later, listeners. Stay tuned.
Wow, hooking us in. Okay.
So we'll be talking about that and also other quirky, out-of-the-box documentaries worth a watch.
Yeah, and I'll be giving everyone, I'm sure you've been wondering why I've not been talking about him, but updating everyone on the latest Christopher Nolan epic that will be arriving in cinemas next year, The Odyssey. So I've got a few little updates on what's been happening with the shooting of that.
Can't wait for that. But first, Disney has been having some boy trouble. James, can you explain?
Well, Disney watching has been like one of these like strange hyperfixations that I never thought I would ever get on something, but it seeped into me. So I've been keeping tabs on Disney in general as a corporate entity, as far as like what the hell's happening at Disney, basically, right? And so this article is like but a facet of what's happening at Disney, but it's like this big interrelated, I don't know if mosaic's the right word, or like a weird dodecahedron, and you pull one part. So before we go to like Gen Z and the problem that Disney are having with Gen Z men or male audiences is they've got a bigger problem. The bigger problem is just to be clear, the film division of Disney is not as profitable, doesn't make anywhere near as much money as parks and park attendants. So really, the way you got to think about Disney's business model is your films get people into the parks, right? And if your films aren't hitting with a mainstream audience, because let's be honest, Disney is not a fringe, it's not a niche market. It's the most mainstream you get. So the point is, you've got to get those films, get people through the doors. Park attendance is down. So then you've got to look at why is park attendance down, you see. So there's a bunch of different reasons. One of them is that the prices are just through the roof. The value proposition is ridiculous. It's like $1,000 just to go around a theme park, on top of accommodation. And families have to employ somebody because it's so complicated to book onto the rides. The best way to do it is to employ someone at like $300, $400 who books all the rides for you each day. So
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But one of the other reasons is why is park attendance down is because people aren't seeing enough films. The pop cultural relevance of Disney is down, right? So I'm just giving you a bit of broader context there. So because when these articles pop up, when they pop up in what we'll call the trade mags, right? When I think of the Hollywood trades, we're thinking Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, IndieWire, if you want to go a bit edgy. But you've also got Rolling Stone. They're all owned by the same company, Penske Media. So they are basically like the mouthpiece of Hollywood. So when something comes out in Penske Media, that's why we get a lot of our interesting takes from something like World of Real, which is just like complete outsider. So when you get something from Variety, this is kind of being filtered through what Hollywood would like you to hear, what Disney kind of want you to hear, because they provide access to these companies. They also provide a lot of advertising revenue. So they've got to keep them on side. It's also like, think about Rupert Murdoch. When we say Murdoch Press, they all sing the same tune. You might have the Times that's more intellectual, you have the Sun that's not as, it's much more rougher and readier and raucous. But the point is, they all have this. They're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So Penske Media, it's along those lines. So Variety is saying what's happened to Gen Z men with Disney, especially with Marvel and Star Wars. So let's think about Disney as a business proposition. Straight off the top of your head, Lily, if you had to say what do you associate most readily as far as fictional kind of characters with Disney, what would you say off the top of your head? What we're going to go for here?
Well, Mickey Mouse and princesses, firstly. But then now also Star Wars, of course.
Yeah, but that's what I was going for with Disney princesses.
Okay, great.
Especially,
I said the right thing.
let's just rewind 15 years before Disney acquired either Marvel or either Star Wars, so they weren't even in their category. So we've got the princesses, plus quite right. You've got animated cartoons, which are probably for younger people, children of both sexes, but predominantly princesses, which are going to predominantly appeal to women or to girls. So you're a big corporate entity. What you want to do is you'd want to diversify your business, right? So what you're going to do, you're going to buy boy brands because you want to get those boys coming in. So 15-ish years ago, the exact dates I miss, they bought Marvel first, then followed a few years later by Star Wars. So this article by Variety, which is like, young men aren't going to see Disney films, that's the Hollywood spin. Because what's actually happened is they bought the two biggest male IPs in the history of entertainment, that'd be Marvel and Star Wars, and they've driven away the male audience. That's the real question, is what happened? Why are you suddenly now having to look for original IPs because you've somehow turned away your built-in audience for these two IPs that you bought with a specific business aim of getting that male audience?
Because that was the interesting thing I thought in the article, right? The interesting thing that they didn't dig into was they said that Disney has made an appeal saying that they are now looking for original IP, original stories to appeal to young men. And by young men or Gen Z, we're talking about ages 13 to 28, apparently. That is how they're kind of ring fencing this term. And there wasn't actually much in the article about why exactly that is. And do you think it's down to the fact that they've completely fucked the unoriginal IP that they spent so much money on, first of all, buying and then making, additional films, TV shows, animated products?
I think that's exactly essentially. Long story short, that's what's happened, and they're not asking that question because that's not as Hollywood friendly. That's going to piss Disney off. The question is, what's wrong with the audience? Why aren't they coming to see our films? Rather than saying, what did we do to the films to drive away the audience?
Well, I feel like it's an optimistic spin. It's like, yay, everyone! You hear all the time about how Hollywood doesn't get that we want original stories, and they're overplaying and redoing again and again, rebooting old product. This is so optimistic that they're now looking for original things, and I do hope that they're going to. Yeah, but obviously the reality is it's because they kind of squeezed the lemon dry, and now it's just a husk and bitter.
They squeezed the lemon
it.
and it just squirted off, and they didn't catch any of the lemon. And that's a bigger story to unpick. And I think you and I are going to talk on the podcast here about what's happened to Star Wars, and because you're working your way through all the films. Is that correct? Have you got to the end of the film run yet? Have you still got a few to watch?
Well, yes, listeners. Recently, I began the journey of watching all of the Star Wars, having only ever seen the kind of the original three, the first sort of 70s trilogy.
Arguably the only ones you need to see.
Honestly, we'll get into it when we do this episode. But no, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I think there's a lot of great stuff there. But anyway, I watched one spin-off, the spin-off between Rogue One. I watched Rogue One recently, and now last night we began. My husband, we began the first of the kind of newest trilogy.
Oh, I see. So what you did there, Lily, sorry, you've technically broken watching them in release order, and you went slightly for chronologically in the world of the story, in the fictional story.
I know, but Leo's favourite of the new ones is Rogue One, so he just was really keen to watch it. And honestly,
to watch it.
I actually, we were watching it in production order, as it were, but I wish we'd done it in story order this time because I know the first three very well. Oh my god, we're getting distracted, and we're going to talk about this, guys. This is going to be a Christmas special, so we've got some time to wait until we get to it. But
sorry, my question was: Have you watched all the recent? Just because this is kind of essentially you are about to, you're going to go into this is now the Disney era of Star Wars, the last three films.
Yes, I've just begun. I'm an hour into the Disney era. Yes, so we'll talk about that, but yes.
So watching these latest Star Wars films could be an indication where it's going. But as you mentioned, it's not just the films; it's the TV series, the books, the expanded universe. That something has driven away what used to be its core audience. And another thing that isn't referenced in this article again, because the article got a certain slant, is that box office numbers only count for certain things. When we're talking about Marvel and Star Wars, and even the Disney Princess range of films, it's not. The box office receipts is one thing, but what they really all are massive adverts for Disney's merchandising. The whole point of them is to push you to the merchandise. So as much as you can say box office success or flop, what really you care about is your merchandise sales. And what's happened, especially with the new characters that they've introduced in the Disney era Star Wars, nobody's buying the merchandise. Nobody wants to buy the toys. So you can spin it any way you want, but if people aren't buying the toys, they're not buying the toys. They've not made a pop cultural. They've not made any relevance with the audience.
Okay, that is interesting, because the impression when we've talked about Disney's travails, the impression I've got from you is that Disney is in real trouble. But reading this article, they say that 4 movies from 4 Disney labels have grossed more than 1 billion in the last 16 months, which no other studio has done. So the impression I got was, Disney is actually doing pretty well. I didn't know that. Like, is James exaggerating because he has a vendetta against this poor company that's long suffering?
Poor Disney.
But what do you say to that, James?
I say no. I say that their trade magazine's putting a positive spin on it. For example, the easiest rebuttal is like, how many flops have Disney had in the past 16 months? I mean, I tried to do a bit of maths using the old bit of AI, but the figures are too obtuse, basically. But the point is, yes, they definitely made 4 films made over $1 billion, but they've had some of the most historic flops in cinema history over the same time period.
And if the ones that are successful aren't even selling the merch or getting people to go to the theme parks, then the whole business model starts to crumble.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at Lilo and Stitch, for example. Lilo and Stitch, sorry. It made $1 billion at the box office. That's great. Nobody's going to argue with that. However, how many new fans has that created? Or is that just servicing the existing fan base or the existing kind of kids of the adults now who are like, oh, you'd like this, I enjoy this. The point is, it's not really bringing in or expanding an audience. They're going to be like, I can't wait to go to the theme parks to go on to the Lilo and Stitch ride or buy the merchandise. It's servicing an existing audience rather than trying to bring in and encourage more people.
Okay, well, the main thrust of this article was to say that the way Disney sees it, they need to re-engage Gen Z men. That's the boy trouble, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to do so by coming out with original stories that appeal to these men. What do you think about that, James? Is that what they should be doing?
Oh, I mean, here's the thing, though, Lily. It's funny, isn't it? Because I think that's a great idea. I'm fully behind it. And thankfully, there does seem to be an indication that well-made original films are doing well at the box office. Sinners, Weapons, very happy that those two have done well. Those are the first two that come to mind. But I think that's exactly the thing is, like I say, they are completely sidestepping the fact that they've just nosedive these 2 male properties that they bought explicitly for that. But I do think that the thing about original films is they are not going to be the box office success. Then it's highly unlikely an original IP right now will bring in $1 billion at the box office, whereas if you make a good Star Wars film, it will do. So this is almost an admission that going forwards, Disney probably aren't going to be able to make as much cash from their films. But yeah, sorry, as an idea, I think it's a great idea. It's what they should have been doing for the past decade anyway. It's literally, of course, original IPs generate some new stories. You never know which ones are going to be the huge cultural hits, because going back to the same well over and over and over, you're not creating a new pop culture phenomenon. You're just kind of reheating the existing one. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. They need to do it. But what they also need to do is back original voices and get the fuck out of the way, because that's what happened with Sinners. Sinners, they were left to it. There was no studio interference. An original film was allowed to be made, and that's what Disney need to do. And I'm worried they're not good at doing that.
Absolutely. And I just wonder about this dividing audiences by gender, because if we look at films like Sinners or Weapons, maybe I'm totally naive about this, but I'm not sure if it's about appealing to one gender or another, or just making very entertaining movies that everyone wants to see. But maybe that's the ideal, but it's maybe not always doable. It depends on the story, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things happening at the same time. I mean, that's my attitude, is that I'll watch, you can make most things, just make a good film. That's ultimately what I care about. I mean, hopefully from people listening to this podcast hearing my views, it doesn't really matter what genre or what the target audience may have been. I'll watch a good film. But you've also got to remember that's just me, Lily, right? You've got to remember that, let's just take the middle 50% of Americans, right? They may not be that liberal. They might be like, I want to go see a goddamn Star Wars film and it has a Luke Skywalker-esque character fighting bad guys, right?
I know, but girls
there's also a bit in the
too.
middle.
Are you telling me that girls didn't go and see Star Wars? I think
no, I'm not saying that
maybe
at all.
They didn't.
I've
only just started.
No, I'm not saying that, Lily. I'm not saying that. But I just think that I think women probably enjoy that as much as guys, but trying to, I'm getting myself in knots
No,
here.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, you've got to. It's useful to have a target market, right? A target person that you're making the film for, I guess.
Yeah, because I think they call it 4 quadrants. Trying to make films that appeal to every single demographic means that, well, by trying to appeal to everybody, what are you doing to the product there? You know?
Yeah. And that's why we don't have any sex in movies anymore, and it's all very generic. We want to bring some edge back for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm just off the top of my head. I know they're looking for original IP, and we do appreciate that. But I'm just thinking, what about a Labubu film? If it's about if it's about selling merch, come on now.
Oh right, Labubu.
If you can somehow buy the rights to that, okay. It's at this point in time, it's probably very, very expensive, and they don't have the cash to do that. But I'm just thinking, original IP with an appealing toy attached is the way.
So what you're saying to Disney's problem is to just buy another IP?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's my prediction for what film is coming next, but it will probably be a Disney product. I mean, a Netflix product, I imagine.
No, I think the thing is, you've probably predicted what is going to happen. Mm-hmm. They're going to make all this talk about original IPs, and they're going to buy Labubu and just make a Labubu movie. You know.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, gang.
Yeah, exactly. Keep your eyes peeled. I can just see it, though. I mean, I don't know if you've watched the South Park episode about Labubu that came out last week, but
no,
it was. I mean, honestly, perfection. It was kind of drawing on like various horror movies that have come out recently, and their demonic smiles really do lend itself to some kind of horror movie. You know, a kind of
great.
A Gremlins-esque film potentially. Speaking of IP, as we always are, I was thinking about the fact that the documentary film is also having a bit of an IP problem.
Oh yeah, why is it? Why are we having an IP problem with our documentaries?
Well, thank you for asking me that, James.
I feel like I should know this, but please tell me.
Well, this is what I think. So, with the rise of the streamer documentary, you know, Netflix really, part of what made its name was films like Tiger King and, series like Tiger King and Making a Murderer. And that kind of kick-started, because these were such hits, we've moved into this world where the streamers make these documentaries that are usually, these days, they're based on a news story that went viral on social media. And then probably it was written, or it would either be a news story that's gone viral or a long read that you find in, you know, The Cut or New York Times or something like that. Then that will become a podcast that you probably listen to. And then it becomes a streamer documentary. And then maybe it'll be made into a dramatized version of the same story. I'm thinking of the Amanda Bynes, no, God love her. Amanda
Knox.
Actually, I wasn't thinking about that one. But yes, there is an Amanda Knox film coming out.
You're thinking the Amanda Seyfried thing.
The Amanda Seyfried one about Elizabeth
Holmes.
Elizabeth Holmes, thank you, yes. And Farranon? What you all know what we're talking about, I'm sure you do, and if not, just Google it. Google Elizabeth Holmes and you'll be horrified. But because of this, documentaries have become this space where they're being produced in this really rapid way. They're not deeply, carefully researched, and often there's no consideration for the real people that are involved. It's very cynical, and it's looking for the most scandalous thing, the most kind of, you know, jump shock, as it were, in the story. And it's kind of depressing, I think, a lot of the time, even though I myself have been guilty of watching quite a few of them.
Well, no, it's now you've explained the premise. This is something that I've been contemplating for about 10 years, ever since the rise of Netflix as a streaming platform. Is exactly what you've described. I think there is an issue about this. It's I've never thought of it as less of an IP, but more of a style. Like Netflix's documentaries have a particular style, and that style includes is not, but it's very high budget. So everything's clearly the best possible production value. So all your interviews, all your contributors, they're beautifully shot. All the archive has been, I mean, I watch those and I'm just amazed at the quality of the archive footage that they might have. That, you know, they've got it from older, maybe film footage, and they've had it rescanned, so it looks excellent. So the point is, big budgets. But what I also noticed as well, and usually a fascinating story, like you say, probably went viral, probably something in the news, but but the documentaries don't have a voice. They don't have a point of view. They're essentially like a bit like watching a big franchise film that we've just been talking about. Is that they're very well done and they're very engaging, but ultimately, are we suffering from a substance problem? Is there no analysis? There's nothing deeper, and I find that with a lot of. I do like watching them because they're quite easy to watch and they're very entertaining, but. But sometimes I will watch from the BBC Archive YouTube a 1970s, 1980s BBC documentary, and suddenly your brain goes, "Oh, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing some analysis, some commentary, something extra to beyond just being essentially what Netflix documentaries are. They're just a story that's been told."
Exactly. And the thing is, what I'm connecting with IP because basically it is just regurgitating a story that you've probably already read about in the newspapers. Yeah. You've probably already listened to the podcast telling that story. And yes, you're completely
you're
correct.
Right with that. There's a formula. There's a big formula to it. Yeah.
Exactly. And because basically they want to get the story out as fast as possible because they're trying to capitalize on something there's interest for online already. Because of that, the speed at which these things are being made, there isn't time to really give it the room to take that perspective, to think about it critically, to get a kind of a contextual, historical, whatever your perspective on a documentary might be. There isn't time for any of that. It is literally just telling the story and hopefully trying to get a scoop, getting the archive footage or getting an interview with someone who might potentially confess to being some way related, though it usually is never anything particularly interesting. So it's a bit depressing, which is why I was so pleased to see that a film called The Golden Spurtle had been released this past weekend.
Can you make a competition out of making porridge?
3 ingredients:
water, oatmeal and salt.
The perfect bowl of porridge is a marriage of all these 3 things together.
The star of the show should always be the porridge itself. Just let the oats sing.
And what oats will you be using?
Why would I want to tell you? Other people would get to know.
So what is a golden spurtle then, Lily?
Well, first of all, yes. A spurtle is a wooden stick that's used to make porridge. And it's not a wooden spoon. It kind of resembles, I was thinking, the leg of a coffee table in sort of size and shape. It's just a stick basically, but it's very beautifully whittled. And that kind of can give you an insight into what the Golden Spurtle might be. It is about the World Porridge-making competition. And if you win it, you're awarded with this beautiful item, which is the Golden Spurtle.
Gotcha, okay.
And it was just a really beautiful watch because it's set in a village called Carbridge in Scotland, which is near the Cairngorms, and it follows the organisers and also some of the competitors of this competition. And you can imagine there is not a lot of scandal to be had, a lot of shocking revelations in porridge making. It is very much. I'm
imagining quite a few eccentric characters who are after this golden spurtle.
Exactly, that's the thing. What it is a study of eccentricity, really, and the delightful kind of absurdity of humankind. And I feel like it's refreshing to watch a documentary like that because we are kind of overrun with these ones that are really just, I don't know, horror porn, like murder porn. It's kind of such gratuitous, delving into the worst kind of stories you'll read in a newspaper, whereas this is very much the other end of the spectrum. It's showing kind of the best and most endearing of humanity, but not in a kind of sickly sweet, when you sometimes read that a film is heartwarming, it's a bit like, oh God, is it going to be too much? But this isn't like that. It's just delightfully quirky. And also there's something very beautifully kind of international about it because it's an Australian-Scottish co-production. It was directed by an Australian director called Constantine Costi. But it was a co-production with a production company in Scotland called Hopscotch Productions, and you see the kind of mixing of these two things. Kind of, it comes together very beautifully.
I mean, as well, because I had a career in the TV industry, and a lot of the stuff I worked on was factual TV and documentaries. And what was being apparent the past 15 years or so is just the move towards much more formatted reality TV. I mean, which is basically, which is a euphemism, formatted reality. Is basically you turn up, you haven't got the time or the budget to wait around for something to naturally happen, so you have to engineer situations where, oh, are we going to go and get your hospital results, or are we going to go and, you're going to go and do something, so you have to make reality happen. Whereas this, what you've just described, that's a classic documentary. Those are the things that I'm interested in. That's kind of why I got into film and television, was to make those kind of stories. Not you're going to go to Alaska and you're going to film some gold miners and you're going to engineer all the stuff that happened to them. But this kind of documentary takes time, and you might shoot for weeks and not get a single usable piece of footage. But these are what good documentaries are about. They're about like these quirky, where you drill down into these niche activities, you uncover the characters, but that just takes a lot of time, a lot of like building rapport with your contributors, all these kind of things that these days most TV shows you're going to work on are not going to be that pace. They haven't got the time to do that.
Yes, as we were talking, I was thinking, of course, James, you've worked in documentary film for a number of years. So, yeah, I was wondering how these things have kind of changed over the years, if my instinct about it is correct.
Yeah, and just also it makes the edit more streamlined. If you've not shot hours and hours of people making porridge at different competitions, if you've just gone and said, right, we're shooting 2 hours of you getting ready for porridge competition, we want you to make your porridge, something goes wrong, you fix the problem, and then in the edit, it's much quicker. Whereas again, you go to the edit and you've got hundreds of hours of Spurtle-based stuff. Everything takes longer. But that's what makes a good documentary magic, is that you uncover things, and it's essentially a good documentary is lots of happy accidents.
Yes, and you definitely get that impression with this film, because I have to say the competition part of it is quite a small part of the film. You see a little bit of stirring here and there, but they've clearly followed most of a good number of the competitors who we don't spend a lot of time with, because they've obviously chosen who they want to give more time to. But ultimately, the 6 finalists, there's a couple of them have had more time on screen. You've got to know them better, and others not so much. But you get the real impression that they followed everyone and then kind of decided out of that whose story, because ultimately the film really has a protagonist, which is the chieftain of the porridge competition of the Golden Spurtle. He's kind of the head organizer, but he also is a professional whittler of spurtles, and the business of that helps fund the competition. So he's very, very committed. But the film opens with him and his perspective on life, and kind of closes with it as well. And it's really quite beautiful and quite, God, I hate to say it, but heartwarming. It really is. But clearly that is not, they couldn't have known they were going to find this gem of a man to follow during it. I'm sure it just began with hearing about this competition and thinking that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm curious about it, So it really is wonderful. But this is what you said about kind of format versus just allowing things to happen. It does make me think of the film Ticklish that we were discussing before we started recording.
Which I think I've seen, but I can't remember why I saw it or who with. Maybe I went to see it by myself.
Well, I was watching it kind of
Isn't it called Tickled? Or is it Ticklish?
Oh, yes, maybe you're right. Maybe it is called Tickled. Yes, Tickled. Yes, my bad.
Competitive endurance tickling. It was one of the strangest sports I'd seen. So I told Jane O'Brien Media I'd like to do an interview. Instead of getting a yes or no, I got this.
Association with a homosexual journalist is not something we will embrace. Shame on you. Little gay Kiwis. Regards, Jane O'Brien Media.
It was hard to take the insult seriously, considering the sport did seem slightly gay.
From a similar part of the world, this is a New Zealand documentary from 2016. And when we were talking about this topic and thinking about similar documentaries that show kind of the eccentricity of human nature, I'd heard about this documentary and thought, that might fit the bill. But honestly, it doesn't really fit the bill, because it's almost like it's a forebearer to the Netflix documentary that we were talking about. But the difference between this and those sorts of films is it's absurd and surprising, and then goes pretty dark. This is an investigative journalist looking into this tickle competition, quote unquote. But the minute he starts investigating it, he's met with threats of lawsuits, homophobic slurs from someone emailing, ostensibly from the company behind the tickle competition. And the more he goes into it, this man, David Farrier, the scarier and more weird and confusing it gets. But the difference between this and these Netflix documentaries is it's not based on a story that they already know the full, there's not already been a trial.
The story happened while he was making
it. It just became, it began with him as a reporter messaging them on their Facebook asking for an interview, and then naturally kind of evolved from there. And he just brought his camera along with him, very much like kind of gonzo journalism style of documentary making. So it doesn't fit with I wouldn't put it in the same kind of category as the Golden Spurtle, but I would recommend that if you like a kind of surprising and honestly quite alarming, but still absurd documentary, I definitely recommend it.
Right. I mean, yeah, and if you did come to see it with me, the Prince Charles, do let me know, because I can't remember why or what possessed me to go see it, but it just looked interesting, I guess. Yeah, I mean, like when I think of those kind of documentaries, the one that immediately comes to mind is Off the Charts, which is a film from the early 2000s about the song poem industry, which sadly will be an industry now that's going to be replaced by AI, which is there'll be adverts in the back of magazines saying, have your poems turned into pop songs for only £50 or £100. So you would write in, you'd send your lyrics in, or even an idea for a song, and this guy would knock out a song in like a half an hour or something, send it back to you on an audio cassette, and then you got your own, or if you paid enough money, you get a single of it pressed.
There are hundreds and thousands of these records out there. Most of them are very just normal, average, in one ear, out the other kind of things. But then there's that 10 or 20% that are just from another planet somehow.
The power of human absurdity under the law of human absurdity.
So the documentary was all about the people who got their poems made into songs, and then also the other side of it was who are the people who make these songs from people's poems being sent in. And as you can imagine, an eclectic cast of characters. And then my favourite, God, remember, there's one who this guy said he was a teenager and he got really stoned and he just thought, oh, wow, so can I just send in anything I want? And he just sent in the most ridiculous stuff. And the guy making it, didn't question. He was just taking the $50, sending back the record. And he's like, because I have no regrets of any of the money I spent getting this record made.
I love that. Because, there must be an interesting mix of multitude of reasons why you would want your lyrics and what kind of lyrics you'd send in.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, another one that I think of is probably what is called the very first observational documentary, because it was the first time that this kind of documentary be made, where a small crew with quite a small camera follows around characters in the real world for a sustained period of time. And that was Salesman by the Maysles brothers. That's Albert and David Maysles. And that, again, it's about Bible salesmen in 1950s America, and that kind of set the tone for what an observational documentary is. So it was from that point on that other directors and other filmmakers copied that style, which we still see today.
And of course, the Maysles also made Grey Gardens, which you may well have heard of, because it's kind of it's funnily like often in lists of great fashion documentaries.
Oh, really?
Yes, because that isn't ostensibly what it is, but there is something quite glamorous in a kind of decrepit way about the two people in it, because this is a film from 1975 which follows an aging mother and her middle-aged daughter who were the cousins of Jackie Onassis, and they live in this decaying mansion in East Hampton, and the Maysles just follow them around and talk to them as well. A lot of the time the daughter is kind of interacting with them and telling them all about how their lives used to be. And there is this very much, you can see that there was once they led these very glamorous, wealthy lives, and it's all just kind of fallen apart, and they're living in the memories of this in this house that is just completely riddled with fleas, and the grounds are just forest. At one point, the daughter she's speaking to camera, and she's saying, just don't be careful not to drop anything. She's on top of a kind of a balcony on the second floor, and she's like, don't drop anything. I dropped my scarf over the side the other day. I'll never see it again, because just beneath is just thick forest around their house, and they never leave.
I mean, I started watching it recently, and I didn't realise that the state of the house, that's actually after it was done up.
Yes.
so they were going to be thrown out of the house or something, weren't they? And to try and get it up to sanitation standards. And when you see the photographs of what it was like before that they were living in, it's a very, very melancholic story. Like I say, this they're living in this past that doesn't exist anymore. In fact, the present they live in couldn't be any further removed from the past that they had.
Yes, and that it is kind of melancholy is a good word. There's something slightly unnerving about the whole thing, but I don't know. There's also in a kind of sort of dark, unnerving way. It's sort of showing you how people can how far people can kind of crumble or sort of like decay or fall into a state of a life of sort of disrepair almost, when there isn't the kind of structure that was holding them in place. You know, once you become untethered to these sort of social structures, you know, the mother was divorced and left by her husband. That seems to have kind of unglued her, unstuck her from like the social world that she was part of. And clearly in this, you get the impression that this, you know, the world of the Onassas, of the Kennedys, if you become untethered, they're not going to help bring you back. You know, you're out on your own and you're just there with your memories. That sounds depressing, but as a kind of a study of this aspect of human nature, it's quite fascinating.
Oh, yes, it's incredible. And and it just made me realise that as well, I don't know the ins and outs of the background, but I'm guessing that when they had money, that there were people who just took care of all the things that they are unable to take care of. You know, it's like they just don't understand that it requires you to keep your house looking nice. You need to actively do that.
Yes.
It just seems that, you know.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think a huge part of it is the fact that they came from like absolute wealth and yes, having help, quote unquote. So they don't know how to live if they're not being waited on. So basically nothing really gets done.
Yeah.
Any other recommendations, James, of this genre?
I mean, I've got Helvetica written down here, but it's completely off genre. It is not about eccentric. It's about the font Helvetica, you know. I mean, it does what it says on the tin. If you want to watch 90 minutes of a documentary analysing the cultural significance of one single font, this is the film to watch.
Okay, I think on the one hand it might feel like a little off-piece, but I still think the notion of font and the importance of font does tell us something about humankind, right? You know, letters and writing are very significant, so I think it fits.
And this documentary summarises the kind of thing I like, where you take a single subject, and also a single subject that at first glance you're like, really? Helvetica for 90 minutes? But then you take it seriously and dig down it, because obviously somebody's got to have designed Helvetica. Who were they? Why did they design it? What was the reason for Helvetica? And what I didn't realise is Helvetica heralded the kind of the birth of the modern age, let's say. It was around up to the 1950s, especially if you look at advertising. Like a single advert would have like 3 or 4 hand-drawn different styles of font. So it was all a little bit chaotic to grab your attention. And then this kind of idea of minimalism and modernism, Helvetica was the first font to address that. It wasn't like Times New Roman, so it was sans serif. It didn't have any of the curly serif bits at the end. But it was also all about just being as minimalistic as possible. So it was the first modern font, you would say. And I was like, I had no bloody idea.
You're selling it to me. Okay, I'm going to watch that. As soon as I finish Tickled, I'm going to get on that.
Next on the list.
The other one I really wanted to mention was Fire of Love. Did you see that? It came out 3 years ago.
No, I didn't, but that's definitely a film that I want to watch. I always look very intriguing, that one.
Wonderful documentary by Sarah Dosa, and it follows a volcanologist couple, Katia and Maurice Kraft, French volcanologists who have this almost kind of compulsive addiction to getting close to erupting volcanoes. And they, throughout their careers, they were working from the 70s onwards. They were documenting what they did. They had cameras with them. They took pictures. It's kind of incredible because obviously, you know, it was a lot more complicated to film things and document than it is now. But it really is a very beautifully put together documentary. The way Sarah Dosa stitches all the footage together to tell the story of their passion for volcanoes, that their love for each other, that they're real, that they're complete they would rather be on a volcano than be in a city, be around people. That's really where they're happy place. And that, again, I think these kinds of... It was very interesting because I did learn some stuff about volcanoes I did not know before, but really showing that the level of human passion that there exists in this world, people having these seemingly bizarre and life-threatening interests, but what good that can do in the world. Their research did a lot of good. But mostly it's just really fascinating to see this couple and how passionate they are about volcanoes.
Yeah, I mean, great to have met your one, and you both got the same passion.
I mean, incredible. But I mean, they have different levels of craziness. Like at one point in the documentary, Maurice and one of his colleagues decide to get into a boat in a river of acid. There's a river of acid flowing from a volcano, and they decide to float around in it ostensibly because they want to take some samples or do some studies of the temperature. But of course, the equipment, as soon as it goes into the acid, melts and disperses. And then they try and paddle back to the side, but the wind is taken in the other way. So they just have to let the wind pass. They can't obviously go by force because, if anything happened, even splashing them would cause serious damage, right? So they just have to wait it out. And it takes almost 3 hours for them to get back out of the river, and the whole time Katya is just watching them furious because she is not as crazy as him.
I bloody told him not to go out on that river of acid, and would he listen? No.
Exactly. But there is something very, I don't know, weirdly like life affirming or inspiring to see people at the extremes of interest. But yeah, so those are just a few examples of documentaries in this kind of world. Hopefully you can go to the Golden Spurtle. I would really recommend it, but it isn't being shown in that many cinemas. I think it was shown in 4 or 5 in London.
No, which was a problem because I live in Manchester and we get most things, but it was not on any screenings in the centre of Manchester. The past few weeks, which is annoying.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I definitely keep an eye out for it because I'm sure it will come to streaming soonish. And James, it's a shame you didn't get to because I'm sure you'd be able to answer me that, but it seemed to have been filmed on film. Like it looked really beautiful. It was it had an old-timey quality to the
great.
film.
I'll have a little dig down into that, yeah.
Yeah, but if you can't catch that, any of those films we just recommended, I think will scratch that itch. If you want to see a documentary that isn't about murder or someone going missing.
And something, and also a documentary that has a bit of a perspective, a bit more of a point of view than you just been recounted a story.
Yeah, and honestly, just a bit more creativity as well. It's not by numbers. None of these documentaries are by numbers. They all are given space for magical things to be captured and to happen.
Well, talking about capturing magical things.
Yes, James, go on.
I didn't need to be asked twice to pull together this Christopher Nolan progress report. where is where is Christopher Nolan at with his latest film? So I just pulled together a few things that caught my eye. So he's just finished shooting. He's now in post-production on the Odyssey, which is coming out next year, July the 26th, 21st, something. The same weekend he always has. I can never remember the exact date.
And I would, at this point, have added in a clip from the trailer, but that trailer was leaked a few months ago and was very quickly removed from the internet. Did you catch it? Did you see it?
Well, it's available, but only in cinemas. This is like typical Christopher Nolan. The trailer is out there, but only on the cinema. So the idea is to give you that special, if you see it, you've seen it exclusively in the cinema. So it's not online officially yet. If you go digging around the depths of Reddit, you might find something. But yeah.
I go to the cinema all the time and have not seen it. Hopefully with Paul Thomas Anderson's film, maybe I'll catch it before then.
Also, I'll be honest with you, he's very selective about the screen. So if you go to see something at an IMAX screen, you'll probably catch it. But if it's just like a regular smaller screen, again, it's all very deliberate. It's like if you go on one of the big screens, you'll probably get the Odyssey.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so Yeah, it's been. I don't know if it's definitely his longest, but it's certainly up there as being his longest continuous shoot. It's been a 6-month shoot that they just wrapped a couple of weeks ago. Proper globe trotting. The thing that kind of made me smile was that I kept on my Google News feed that's clearly learnt about my interest. I started getting lots of these little articles from places in Scotland because, of course, the cast and crew filmed for several weeks in Scotland. So we had Christopher Nolan goes to see the F1 film at the Elgin Playhouse in Moray, which is like and it's been a cinema since the 1930s. It's the tiniest screen ever, and apparently Christopher Nolan said it's a lovely wee cinema or a lovely wee place.
That's lovely.
We also had a report from a pizza restaurant about Christopher Nolan's favourite pizza, pepperoni, apparently.
Oh gosh.
And there's like pictures of and they all and Matt Damon posing with various people in restaurants and bars and stuff. So that must have been fun being a resident around there. Suddenly, the whole of Hollywood, because it's got such a stacked cast. You've got Zendaya and Tom Holland wandering around these small Scottish kind of towns and villages. Of course, building to as far as what we saw was that drone footage of this Viking longboat being filmed going across the rivers, the waterways of Scotland. So it looked incredible. So I can't wait to see that.
Well, that's okay. So filming in Scotland, because I believe before that they were filming near Rome, no? Sorry, in Sicily.
They've been filming everywhere. I mean, when I look at the list of locations they've filmed in, Greece, Italy, it's a proper globe-trotting production. So it's been everywhere. Obviously, he likes to do everything in camera. So they've been, I mean, we'll leave a link if you want to have a look, but probably spoilers. Is it spoilers? Everyone knows the kind of roughly the story. But the Trojan Horse and the set the set of, is it Troy that the Trojan Horse is sent into, looks spectacular, and it's all been built for real. It's now I'm a bit of a nerd for budgets and all that kind of stuff. I think about 225 million budget is being reported. Adjusted for inflation, it's not his biggest budget to date. His biggest budget adjusted for inflation was The Dark Knight Rises, which was like 225 million, but 12 years ago now. It's not his biggest budget, but it's still a huge budget. But I think what this is going to be a demonstration of what you can do if you don't just resort to making everything in CG. Of course, he's going to have computer-generated graphics. He always does, but he tries to build most of it. He tries to go to show off locations around the world, which is definitely what he's doing here. A couple of other things is that this is shot with brand new IMAX cameras. So it's going to be the first film in the history of cinema to be completely shot on IMAX. Whereas when we went to see Oppenheimer, for example, it alternated between IMAX sequences and then just regular widescreen sequences. So the entire film wasn't shot with IMAX cameras, just a significant portion of it. But this time, the entire thing. So they built brand new carbon fiber cameras, a bit quieter, a lot lighter. So it just makes it possible to do that. So that's going to be a bit of a first coming up.
Amazing. So are they still shooting? Are we still in the process of shooting, or have they finished?
We're wrapped. I saw on Reddit a few people in the crew had shown their wrap gifts, which was a book of the Odyssey, a really nice folio edition.
Oh, lovely.
Although imagine maybe after 6 months you'd be like, this is the bloody last thing I want to read. But hopefully not.
Yeah, it's very true. Who wants to read that? I mean, who honestly wants to read the Odyssey anyway? But right after you've been filming it, like, I know what happens. I've seen it myself with my own eyes.
Yeah. But of course, the big talk in the IMAX Vanguard WhatsApp community is it going to be over 3 hours or under 3 hours, Lily? Because what's important about the 3 hour threshold for a Christopher Nolan film?
Oh gosh, what is it?
That's the longest duration you can fit on an IMAX 70mm reel. You cannot go over 3 hours.
Oh, so what would happen if we went over?
Well, that's the big question, because you're telling me Christopher Nolan's going to project the master version of his film off digital? Because digital can run forever, but film's got 3 hour cap.
But can't you have a projectionist changing the reels?
Well, yes, but you'd need to have a pause, because there's if you look at the IMAX projectors, they are huge. You can't do that kind of.
I mean, hey, we had an intermission in the middle of The Brutalist. Maybe there'll be an intermission.
Maybe, exactly. I mean, I'm hoping that it just gets the film down to 3 hours, but everyone says that it's going to be impossible to get the Odyssey into 3 hours. But that would be my preference. And I think the reason why they did a pre-sale recently where they sold tickets for the 70mm IMAX screening a year in advance for the Odyssey.
Which we didn't get tickets to. Devastating.
No chance.
They sold out immediately.
And by the way, have you seen what the tickets look like? They are beautiful. There's people posting what the tickets, they're absolutely beautiful pictures.
I'm so devastated.
But I think that was to put to bed people saying, oh, it's not going to be projected off film. So that's a guarantee. He's already a year in advance said IMAX 70mm. So he's got a plan. So it could be intermission, or my preferred one is just don't make it longer than 3 hours. Easy, you know. Yeah. Cut out all the boring bits in the Odyssey. I don't know what's in there, but just cut out the boring bits.
I mean, I'm with you. I blanched at a 2.5 hour film, so 3 hours will be quite a number. But, you know, it's Christopher Nolan. I didn't mind with Oppenheimer, the length of the film. If it's good, I will endure it. So when is the film going to come out?
Well, the film, it's around his usual weekend, which is like mid-July. So the UK release date is 17th of July.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because there's a weekend every year, right, that he always releases the same weekend around the same time.
It's like his Lucky Charm weekend, you know, which, to be fair, it's done pretty well for him. So
and that's why we had Barbenheimer, because he wasn't going to release it on any other day, and Barbie refused to move, and it worked out well for both of them.
Warner's deliberately the first person out of those two to announce their release date was Christopher Nolan with Oppenheimer, and then months later Warner's deliberately chose that exact same weekend because, of course, Christopher Nolan has walked away from Warner Brothers after a very profitable 15 years with them, and so it was a bit of a fuck you, Christopher Nolan, but in the end,
it worked for both of them.
yeah, it worked out great for everybody.
Well, that's great. Thank you, James, for giving us a progress report. We'll check in again with you in a few months' time, maybe a few weeks' time, when there's more news about the film. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, usually this period there's not a lot to report because, I mean, he's very secretive. He keeps backstage and press leak photographs to a minimum. So now he's in post-production. We're probably not going to see or hear much until we start drumming up the hype phase.
Okay, yeah. So we'll check back in with you when we have a trailer to play some audio of here, and we can discuss what we anticipate for the movie. I'm very excited. It's going to be great.
And so, do you have any recommendations of what's coming up for the next few weeks, Lily?
Yes, James. Okay, so the Odyssey is obviously many, many months away, but in the meantime, I give you Laura Mulvey, Thinking Through Film, a season celebrating the writing and films of the feminist film theorist Laura Mulvey at the BFI.
Laura Mulvey, who coined, of course, the classic film phrase, the male gaze.
Yes, exactly. Visual pleasure and narrative cinema was her essay that she wrote 50 years ago. So I think this is all to tie in with that anniversary. And yeah, it is the essay that used the term the male gaze for the first. Actually, I don't know if it was the first time, but it definitely kind of popularized this notion that the way the camera films the female form is basically a way of colonizing and dominating the female body and kind of subjugating it. And it's kind of difficult to put into words just how significant this essay is and how it kind of changed film and evolved feminist film criticism, which is like a very big kind of subject in academic writing. But she's a hugely influential writer. And so I was really excited to see that they were having this season because it kind of opens with her being given the BFI fellowship on the 4th of November. And what follows is an in-conversation event with her talking about her work and her career and her attitude to film. And then there'll be various screenings of films that she's made or films that kind of are influenced by or fit with her kind of perspective.
Yeah, I'm interested what this is going to be because they said that the Classics on Screen season, which runs anyway, it's going to be curated by Laura Mulvey, but that's in November, December, and they haven't announced those films yet. There's also like a season of melodrama films that she's going to handpick a few. So I'm kind of very interested to see what the films that she's picked are going to be.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm letting you know this kind of far in advance because the kind of statement came out on Friday about it, but there aren't yet tickets available and the full kind of details of what's being released haven't yet been announced. But just keep an eye on the BFI website because I think it will be a really amazing season. And I think tickets for those main talks, because she is giving some Q&As to follow some of her films and some introductions to some of them, they'll probably go quite quickly. So keep an eye out is what I will say. James,
Excellent.
What about you? Any recommendations?
Well, mine's just a little public service announcement for anybody who's thinking of seeing One Battle After Another, the new Paul Thomas Anderson film. The early signs are looking positive, the murmurs, because, I like to kind of read the room or get an idea, and it's sounding positive. It's Paul Thomas Anderson, so I'm excited anyway.
Definitely.
But, there's been a lot of pushback that it hasn't tested well. People weren't too sure about Leonardo DiCaprio's character, all that kind of stuff, but it seems to be the actual noise coming out. It seems to be very good.
Christopher Nolan is quoted as saying it's an excellent film. He loved it. So there
Great.
you go.
And Spielberg said something along the same lines. So, pretty good sound. So if you're planning to go see it, here's the headline, right? It was shot in VistaVision, which you may have heard of being bandied around. VistaVision, this camera format from the 1950s. Brady Corbett shot some of The Brutalist on it. The entirety or the majority of this film has been shot on this VistaVision format. Now, what does that mean? Well, it just means it's a very high quality, high resolution film format. It's also something that hasn't been routinely used to shoot a feature film since Hitchcock was using it in the 50s and 60s. The best two ways to go and see this film, if you are able to catch it, is either at an IMAX cinema, where it's been optimised especially for the IMAX screen, so you should get a very big image. If you go to the View Printworks in Manchester, which I love, you're going to get the whole square frame of IMAX. It's actually not just the wider screen IMAX, but the full fat IMAX experience. So that would be worth checking out. I've already got my ticket to go see it there. But then the real one, this is the equivalent of getting the fanciest wine from your cellar that's 70 years old out. Do you want a glass of this wine? Which means you'll only ever get one chance to have a drink of this glass of wine and taste it. Oh my God, is to see it projected in VistaVision. Even back in the 50s and 60s, there were maybe 5 or 7 projectors built to screen VistaVision because it's a particularly unique format. And so they've restored, I knew they were restoring 2 of them, one for LA and one for New York, but literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was then announced that in London, they've got one of the VistaVision cameras. So if you are a London listener and you fancy seeing One Battle After Another, absolutely go try and see the VistaVision version. The tickets are on sale now because that's a very unique opportunity to see the film. And that's the definite preferred version that Paul Thomas Anderson would like you to see if possible. But you kind of have to live in London and it also costs a fortune. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a treat. It's a special visit, but it's definitely worth it. So you guys who don't know the travails of us trying to figure out seeing this movie in the right format, but also in good time to talk about it on the podcast. But don't worry, guys. We think we cracked it. Fingers crossed. We will certainly be talking about it on our episode following the release in a couple of weeks' time. So, but with no spoilers. So don't worry. If you can't see it for a few weeks, if you're having to hold out until October to see it in the correct format, that's okay. We won't ruin it for you. We promise.
Excellent. Oh, yeah, and it's coming out in 70mm as well, but there's only one print, and Barnsley might get the 70mm print. I'll keep you updated on that.
This is very much a podcast for people in London or in Manchester and the surrounding areas. So,
/ Barnsley,
I mean, at least we're kind of we're at 2 points in the map. Hopefully, most of my listeners will be able to catch it.
Somewhere between them.
Well, yes, exactly. All right, well, I think that's everything, James. So, thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Groovy Movies.
Thank you. And as always, if you could find a moment to leave us a like or write us a review, it all helps get our podcasts out and about.
So we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Groovy Movies is produced and edited by us, Lily Austin and James Brailsford. And James also produced the theme music.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Groovy Movies Pod or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
For more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.